Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar in the AMATYC 2021 webinar series, Mu Alpha Theta, Honor Society for two-year college math students. Our presenter is Jonathan Weisbrod, and this is sponsored by Mu Alpha Theta. Any views expressed by the presenter are not necessarily the views of AMATYC, and any commercial products mentioned are not endorsed by AMATYC. McGraw-Hill is the sponsor of the 2021 AMATYC webinar series. If you would like information on more AMATYC webinars or just any AMATYC information and are not a member, please consider being a member. You can sign up at our regular website, amatyc.org, or a lot of information on one of our many Facebook sites, our main site, or several regional sites. There are other professional development opportunities through AMATYC. The national conference next year will be in Toronto, as well as other webinars and traveling workshop options. And the recordings of this and other past webinars can be found on the amatyc.org page in the webinar section or at myamatyc.org. So I will stop sharing and I will turn it over to our presenter today, Jonathan.
Thank you, Pat. All right, and all right, looks good. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan Weisbrod. I am the AMATYC liaison to Mu Alpha Theta. Wanted to start off just introducing myself. I'm also a mathematics assistant professor at Rowan College at Burlington County. So like many AMATYC members, I teach math at a community college. As the AMATYC liaison with Mu Alpha Theta, I also take a role on Mu Alpha Theta's governing council. So it's a dual leadership position between both organizations. Before taking on that role, I was the chapter sponsor at my college here, Rowan College at Burlington County. And I'd also like to hear from you. So please utilize the chat. If you haven't already introduced yourself, I'd like to know, what institution do you teach or work at? Is your institution involved in Mu Alpha Theta? Does your institution have a math club? And what would you like to get out of this webinar? So please utilize the chat so that everyone has a chance to introduce themselves. Thank you to those who have already done so. And I also want to see how many participants we have, so I know how many we're waiting on. All right, thank you, James. Thank you, Linda, Michael. Okay, one's coming in. Okay. A few more coming in. Okay, well, thank you all for adding that information in there. It looks like most of our attendees are not at schools with chapters, but we do have some that do have chapters. That'll be good for discussion moving forward. So first, I wanted to share Mu Alpha Theta's mission statement and some of the objectives that the organization has. Overall, it's a honor society for high school and two-year college um, students. There tends to be more high school chapters than two-year college chapters. And part of my role is to increase the number of two-year college chapters. And I'm glad to see that we have some interest among some of the attendees. Some of the objectives I have for myself for this webinar is to share some of the benefits toward your students, toward your institutions, and toward all of you as potential sponsors or current sponsors. Specifically, what Mu Alpha Theta chapters can do for students. There are impacts on learning and being involved with Mu Alpha Theta chapter. Keyword there is involvement. So collaborative projects, community-based learning, and undergraduate research are all things that my own chapter has been involved in over the past several years. And each of these are identified as high impact educational practices by the American Association of Colleges and Universities. If you are ever making the case to anyone who needs to grant approvals to you for doing something of service to your college, adding research in there behind the effectiveness is going to be beneficial in making your case that this is something that the college should sign on to. Also, a way to recruit students especially is to utilize Mu Alpha Theta as a resume builder. And being part of Mu Alpha Theta gives students the ability to gain some leadership experience. If they participate in competitions, they have results for competitions. And then there's also scholarships, grants, and awards that Mu Alpha Theta sponsors. Each of these backed by research as well, that employers look at these items as making applicants more hireable. And so I did cite this research done by, I think it was Ohio State, where they surveyed would-be employers about what they look for on resumes and in their applicants fresh out of college. What I've experienced with students that I've worked with, leadership, oftentimes we have students who are very into math, but may not be so into leadership. But then once they get involved in something that they really like, leadership comes natural to them. Once they realize that the leadership team of the club gets to make decisions on what we do with our club activities. Competition results, there are plenty of competitions out there at various different levels. Some localities have them, states have them, and then there's several national competitions that I'll bring up throughout this webinar. And I'm also going to itemize some of the scholarships, grants, and awards that Mu Alpha Theta will sponsor. The picture here, this was one of our community events that my institution had a few years ago. We invited community members out to the college, and different groups had hands-on experiences. So this was our Mu Alpha Theta math club room. And then there were other disciplines within the STEM division who had things going on. And then we also had other clubs. We had some recruitment efforts in other rooms. So this was an annual science slam that was done yearly prior to COVID. And some of the benefits to the institution are listed here. At community colleges, apologize for generalizing, but many community colleges do like to have those local relationships with outside organizations. And so having a honor society sets these students apart, and it's pretty easy to get local businesses to have an interest in giving talks to our organization or being in touch with our members, all you have to do is ask. So we did have a speaker from Lockheed Martin, which is one of our local employers that many of our students go for internships or jobs after graduation or jobs after transfer and then graduation. The prestige of an honor society is always helpful. We have honor cords for our students. You can get honor stoles. There's pins, there's patches. At my institution, students tend to wear the cords at graduation, but other chapters may have different traditions that they utilize. Press releases. So what you see on the right here, this was a press release that our college put out at one of our induction events several years ago. It looks like 2017. So that gets the information out to the community. And I know my college and many other two-year institutions are really looking for enrollment numbers. And when a high school student or a graduated adult who's looking to come back to college sees what they could be doing at this college if they come here, that's always a bonus for the institution to have some of these great activities highlighted for potential students to see. And then I also put in a few other bullet points here. Alumni relations, that's always big with colleges. And one of the efforts that I do is to get former officers from our math club to come back and be involved in one way or another. Some of our past officers have been invited to give talks. Others have been invited back to see some of the events that we have. Okay, so moving on to benefits to faculty. I pulled this information from the American Association of Community Colleges. These are the leadership competencies for community college leaders in the faculty category. So many of the attendees here who are looking to work their way up through leadership in various different ways, whether it's through academic administrative leadership or leadership in professional organizations or leadership within your own your own department. I would recommend taking a look at this publication by the AACC to have guidance on what really makes a good leader in each of these categories. So faculty is one category, and then there's mid-level leadership, such as a dean level, or even senior leadership, VPs and presidents. The reason I'm highlighting some of these is that I did want to specifically note some of the things that Mu Alpha Theta advising can touch on. So our first bullet point, we think about the mission, vision, and values of the community college. Student success, access, affordability, these are always high on the list of mission statements at community colleges. And what we'll have are many students that are at the community college for a reason, whether it's financial, whether it's outside responsibilities, whether it's working adults. And so these are populations that would be more highly concentrated in community colleges than they are at our partner four-year institutions. And by leaving out community colleges from any of the honor societies, we're missing that group of students. And we also want to champion those students who are really high performing by giving them those opportunities to excel very high. We are able to build what the community college is going to be over the next few decades. And for me personally, I would like it to be a prestigious sector of higher education. We are great at preparing students for the workplace, and we also need to ensure that we're preparing students for transfer if that's their option. Improving access, retention, and success. So there is some research showing that involvement in clubs is directly related to student success and retention. Access to many of the opportunities that Mu Alpha Theta can provide. Scholarships provides direct financial access. And then also the competitions and the club activities that can be sponsored by Mu Alpha Theta. Those are things that our students may not get otherwise. We always tend to have a student-centered institution with community college mission statements. And this is also a personal recommendation I would make to any faculty member is when you want to do something at your college, centered around the students and how it benefits them. And you usually will get, well, more likely a yes answer. So I wouldn't approach, for those of you looking to start a chapter of Mu Alpha Theta, don't lead with it being that it would be good for you, lead that it would be very good for our students. And you're more likely to get buy-in from the mid to upper level leadership at your institution. Championing community college ideals. That is something that we as faculty should be aware of with the community involvement, not just in the college, but when we go slightly outside to the employers outside, the prospective students and their families in the nearby area. We want to really make a good name for community colleges. It's great for our sector, it's great for our individual institutions. And by having an honor society, we are showing that our college really does have those great students there, and these are the great things that they can do. And by doing all those things, we are advancing the community college agenda and creating those relationships. Okay. I want to go through some brief history of Mu Alpha Theta. So going back to 1958 was when this organization was established. Originally a high school and junior college mathematics club. Whether you know the history of community colleges much or not, I'll share a little bit about that. So the American community college is pretty recent. It's early 1900s when community colleges really took on their role in higher education. After World War II, and then in the expansion of suburban America, especially, 50s, 60s, 70s was really a boom time for community colleges. So it wouldn't surprise me if I put a poll out there for all of you and asked when your college was founded, that the majority of them would be between the 50s and 70s. Many community colleges were established then. So this does pair well with when community colleges were really building up their own sector of higher education. The next major milestone for Mu Alpha Theta was the national conventions back in 1968. And then the other milestone I wanted to point out was in 2002 when AMATYC became an official partner organization with Mu Alpha Theta. And that's when my role was established, not me personally, but that role was the liaison to Mu Alpha Theta and AMATYC. And I've been in that role for the last year myself. Other partner organizations, we have the Mathematical Association of America, the Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics, IAM, and NCTM, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Each of those organizations have a Mu Alpha Theta liaison who is on the governing council for the Honor Society. Today, we have about 2,000 active high school chapters, so that's definitely the majority. There are about 70 active two-year college chapters. So when I say active, I mean the ones that are consistently promoting new classes of students. And if I were to map these out, they seem to be pretty clustered. So Alabama has many. Delaware's in there because they really only have 4 campuses, but 2 of them happen to have Mu Alpha Theta, so I added those in there. Georgia, Maryland, my own state, New Jersey, Mississippi, and Texas. These are the states that have a good number of chapters. So I'm saying a half dozen or so. Many states have no two-year college chapters, and I'd like to see that get spread out more. Our next bullets, some of the things that Mu Alpha Theta is providing to chapters that I want to highlight are contests, grants, scholarships, and awards. This is one way to recruit students, one way to really make the case to our home institutions that chapters are a good idea. And then the annual 5-day national convention. So coming up in 2022, we are going to be in the DC area. I think it's in Alexandria, if I'm not mistaken. It's right over the Potomac in Virginia. And then we have Arkansas, Las Vegas, and Orlando coming up after that. On the right, that was our most recent national convention logo. 2021 was unique. It was a remote convention, so we were not able to visit in person. 2020 was remote as well. And 2019 was our last face-to-face, and 2022 coming up, we're returning to a face-to-face with some probable COVID restrictions in one way or another. All right, knowing that many of you who are attending this webinar are interested in starting a chapter, I can elaborate a little bit more on this as well. The eligibility for a chapter is listed here. So these would be the minimums. When you fill out the application form, you would need to be listing those 3, at least, mathematics courses above the pre-calculus level. You would need to identify who your faculty sponsor would be. And there are some not hard to meet requirements, but there are some requirements on who that can be. And we will need approval from an academic officer at the college who can really have the role of being the one who can approve the financial implications of getting a chapter, as small as they are. It's a $25 chapter initiation fee and $10 per charter member. But we do want to make sure from Mu Alpha Theta's perspective that you have the college's support. Minimum student eligibility. So the first one's pretty easy. If a student is already a Mu Alpha Theta member from high school, then that student can be a Mu Alpha Theta member at their community college. For a student who is trying to enter the Honor Society, the minimum requirements are completing at least one course at or above college algebra or pre-calculus, have a cumulative GPA of 3.0 or higher in those math courses, and there's a $10 induction fee. I want to elaborate as well that in your club's constitution, you do have some flexibility. While you can't go below these requirements, a club can decide to increase the requirements to have higher level mathematics required, a higher GPA. You can determine what the requirements for the induction fee would be, whether they come from the student or from the club. If there's fundraising requirements, if there's service requirements, if there's attendance requirements. I did see a question came up in the chat, and I can address that. So the question is, how do we determine if a student was a member of Mu Alpha Theta in high school? I would say that it would most likely be that the student would tell you that they're a Mu Alpha Theta member. If a student were to say that they were unsure, let's say they're unsure, we could have you contact the national office with the student's name and their high school, and that can be looked up fairly quickly by one of our staff members at Mu Alpha Theta. I really think that the students would tell you. All right. All right. Also, to highlight some of the contests that Mu Alpha Theta has, the Log 1 contest, This is as similar to the national convention contests as these are going to get. I do have a link to it, so I do want to click that once we go through these. The three divisions, we have mu, alpha, and theta, and they're based off of level of mathematics. At a community college, I would assume most would be within the mu and alpha categories. I potentially, we could have some students in theta, but do keep in mind that this is a high school and two-year college honor society, so we do need to address both levels. Students can enroll in the competition in their correct division. And I'll take a quick look here. This is an example of one of the rounds of the Log 1 contest. So this is our Theta division. So these are problems that students would be seeing in, where'd my mouse go? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of a technical issue. My mouse disappeared and I can't scroll.
Jonathan, let me jump in there and stop your sharing, and maybe that'll.
Yeah, that might help. All right, I see my mouse again. So how about I just share the web page rather than through PowerPoint, and we'll go back to PowerPoint. Okay, so here is an example of a couple of years ago, the Log 1 contest. We're starting off with the Theta division. So that's the algebra. So students who have completed, I believe Algebra 2 is in the Theta division. And they could be competing with questions like these. Now this is available on mualphatheta.org. I encourage any of you interested to start exploring through that website. The alpha division, so this is pre-calculus. And then mu division, now we're looking at calc division. So this can be downloaded from past tests under Log 1 under the contests on the Mu Alpha Theta website. For any of you who would be sponsoring a chapter and your students be participating, those past tests are great as practice. All right, let's share back the PowerPoint. The Rocket City Math League is another contest. It does tend to go all the way down to pre-algebra levels. I don't know if any of our students would be involved in that, but it is an option. Both of those two contests are free for chapter members, and they would be hosted at your own institution, graded and submitted. The National Convention, so this is the annual event that's really the hallmark of our organization. There are many different contests throughout the entire week, fitting different types of students and their preferences. So there are course-based contests, there are speed contests, there are calculation contests. And I'm going to highlight a little bit about that national convention next. All right, so this grid down here, the table, it's showing all the different topics throughout the week of what types of competitions there are. So the whole range of students. With our students, they're going to be college algebra prepared versus those who might have taken even differential equations. They can all find something that's relevant to their background knowledge. With any competition, it's not always just the content knowledge, it's also the critical thinking skills and the problem solving skills that really get highlighted. And so these competitions are built so that the content is relevant, but the difficulty in critical thinking, creativity, and problem solving can be quite high, making them really prestigious competitions. So all these topics, I think any student would be familiar with, something that they would like, and it would touch on any student's skill sets one way or another. A little more about the National Convention. In an effort to recruit new chapters from attending, we do have a one-time chapter convention scholarship. It's $5,000 toward travel for a sponsor and several students to go. There are need-based scholarships as well for students who are financially in need of support in order to go. We don't have a set rule on what establishes a need base, so be in touch with the national office if that is something that you'd be looking into. I would suggest being in touch with your financial aid department if that's something, on what would establish or what would define somebody as a need-based student. And we do have a video, just a slideshow of the most recent in-person convention. So it was at Alexis Park in Las Vegas. Beautiful pool. This is some of the competitions, group competitions. We had plenary talks, individual competitions, special sessions, lots of sponsors, lots of students. There's a bunch of the tests. Plenary talk again. Sponsors, students. Awards. More awards. I don't know what our numbers are going to be. Your guess is as good as mine for DC. But we will be in person again, probably all masked and social distanced. I'm looking forward to the next convention. There's always an excursion. So we went to the Mirage and saw a Cirque du Soleil show. That's some pictures of it. The Beatles Love. Okay. All right, video should be closing up soon. Okay. Oops. All right, there we are. All right, some of the financial advantages of being part of Mu Alpha Theta. I highlighted some that are very relevant to community college chapters. So chapter grants, we have $1,000 total per chapter for activities for members, other students, or the community. I'm going to share some of the things that my own institution utilized those funds for. Competition grants. This is always great for students who are into competing. This is $500 per year for expenses related to non-Mu Alpha Theta competitions. So some examples, Putnam, the AMATYC Student Math League, Scudem, or any of the state competitions that might be in your local area. We've utilized the chapter or the competition grants for travel and registration expenses. This is always great to ask for permission from your leadership at your institution to take students on a trip to compete. And the question is, how much will this cost? And you can say 0 because there's a competition grant that covers it all. So it's always easy to get a yes answer when the cost is 0. Summer grants. These are competitive, but students can get up to $2,000 for expenses related to an activity or research. So whether a student is involved in a week, 2-week, 3-week long workshop that needs travel support for it and lodging support, that could be relevant. A student doing research who's going off to Math Fest in the summer to present their work, that could be relevant. Classroom teacher teaching grants. Alumni of Mu Alpha Theta, years after they graduate, they become entry-level teachers. There's always going to be out-of-pocket expenses for new teachers, and those early career teachers can get up to $1,500 from Mu Alpha Theta, competitive based on their leadership as a member of Mu Alpha Theta when they were in college or in high school. But that's there as well. So I've sent that to some of our alumni who have become teachers. And then the scholarships. So each year there are several two-year college scholarships. So this is just in general, students who advance the mission of Mu Alpha Theta, being great students, leadership abilities, local projects, service in mathematics. You can provide recommendations for 2 students per year. And that was always a big point for me when I was a chapter sponsor, was to always have 2 students, regardless of how involved they were and how prestigious some of their efforts were. It's always good to get the application in there. Even if they don't win, it's great to highlight some of the top students. We've had 1 student at my institution who's won that scholarship. Governor's Leadership and Service Award. So this is much more competitive even. This is just given to 1 student for a graduating member for leadership and exceptional service to their Mu Alpha Theta chapter. All right, so I wanted to share some of the things that I've done at my own institution with our club. So chapter grants, we mentioned those. It's $1,000 per chapter for, well, until it's expended. We've utilized it for guest speakers and for our induction events. And so these are some photos. Some of the external events that we've done. We invited Dr. Art Benjamin to give a presentation to the local community. We invited many middle and high schools. We invited through a press release on the left here, just community members who wanted to come. And we got several hundred to attend that. And one of the great benefits there was he also gave a private presentation just to our math club, where many of his tricks were explained in more detail for students who were really into the mathematics behind some of the magic tricks he had. And then also our club were the local organizers for the 2018 joint conference between the New Jersey affiliates of the MAA and AMATYC. That was a great experience with all of our students wearing their Mu Alpha Theta t-shirts. And it was enjoyable to see that the attendees seemed to pick up on seeing somebody in that t-shirt. That's somebody to ask a question, and they know what they would be talking about to give good information. So that was a very successful event that our club was successful in doing. Our students were great. We've utilized competition grants annually. So the first competition we were involved in yearly was the New Jersey Undergraduate Mathematics Competition. It's an undergrad competition held annually in New Jersey. Competition grants have been used to pay for the registration and travel for all of our students for many years going back. All right, many questions that I've gotten. I wanted to highlight what those are and some of the answers to those. So what activities can a chapter participate in? Here are some of the things that you can do. Guest speakers, movie nights, club trips, competitions. Ask your students, is there anything that they'd like to do that we can support? All of those ideas that are up top were not, well, the competition that was originally sponsor driven, but everything else came from the students at some point. And then it just got carried on year after year with some of these activities, in my experience. How to get students involved? That's often asked. Email blasts, posters, classroom announcements. I found that getting faculty to speak one-on-one with the top students that they have and encouraging them to apply to be part of the Honor Society has been the most helpful. In my own judgment, these students might need acknowledgement that they're recognized as some of the top students. And also promoting resume building and competitions is often quite helpful. I found that some of the competitions have really humbled some of the best students. You get a student who's pulling off A's in all their courses, and then they take a competition and the problems are just that much more in depth and difficult. It really makes them see the beauty and challenge of real mathematics. And if you have any questions, the national office can be contacted at info@mualphatheta.org. And then my email address is here as well. I'll be the AMATYC liaison through 2023. And the other question that happens a lot, how do I start a chapter? And that's the next slides. Okay, so let's see what we have here. I have a question in the chat. Is calculators permitted? So I would like to know what the context of that is. If we're talking about the contests that Mu Alpha Theta has, the calculators are not permitted. The competition that I mentioned, the New Jersey Undergraduate Math Competition, that one, calculators are not permitted, but I would assume that there are some competitions out there where calculators are permitted. So that would be based off of the competition rules. So if you have a follow-up question, go ahead and ask that. All right, so while we're here, if you have any questions, please post in the chat. Other than how to start a chapter, we're going to get to that. Okay, so AMATYC has 2 tests in a year. They allow calculators. That's what I say in the chat. All right, so how to start a chapter. First thing, we need the people. So there has to be a chapter sponsor, and there has to be a group of interested students. So that's the first thing. If you have a math club, but not a chapter of Mu Alpha Theta, that's a start as to how to get a chapter. So if you have interested students in being in the Honor Society, you got the hard part done, is finding the people who are involved. Obtaining support for the chapter from the dean or your department chair, or whoever is in charge, whatever the title is, of the divisional finances. My suggestion, always make it student-centered. So this chapter would be great for the students. And then submitting a chapter petition. This is not going to be too difficult, but it is a process. I do see another question that came up. Any contests at the AMY level? So the AMY is really a high school test, but it's a high level high school test. And there are many students in Mu Alpha Theta high school chapters who participate in the American math competitions, including going up through the AMY. I don't know specifically of college level tests equivalent to the AMY. Let's see, I have another question that came up. So we have our biggest struggle is having a math club as well as a Mu Alpha Theta chapter. There are some students who are a member to both, but it is a bit of a challenge having two groups with two advisors. Do you have any suggestions how we can handle this? So actually, yes, we started off with having it kind of split up as well at my institution. We combined it. There is what's called an affiliate member to Mu Alpha Theta. So that would be any student who is not an honor society member, but wants to be involved in Mu Alpha Theta in some way. So the model that I would suggest myself is to have a Mu Alpha Theta math club where students would need to apply to be part of the honor society. And in doing so, they become eligible for things like the scholarships, the grants, the awards, and then some of the sponsored activities. And then the affiliate members, they're still part of the club, but do not have the same opportunities as honor society members would have. So I would suggest combining those two in one way or another and highlighting in your club constitution what it means to be in the honor society, what it means to be just an affiliate member of the club. So that's a good question. All right, if anything else come up, feel free to post in the chat. Next, I'd like to walk through the new chapter petition. Well, Pat, it froze again. Can you? Here, I have an idea. All right, so here is our website for Mu Alpha Theta. To start a chapter and fill out the petition, we would go to join. How to join. We are a two-year college. And this goes through all the requirements that a chapter would have, all the requirements that the students would have to become a member. So I would recommend reading through that. We'll click here, follow the prompts. You would need to create a login, username, password. I'm already logged in here. And we would have a charter application. Charter applications here. We're a two-year college, either a new chapter or reactivating. So you can be in touch with either the national office or with me personally on whether or not your chapter or your college has ever had a chapter. Either way, the requirements are pretty much the same. You fill out this form, all the important contact information. I mentioned that the sponsor would need to fit certain requirements. Most faculty who would be a math honor society sponsor would likely have a math major or something very similar where they've taken advanced math courses. So here are the official requirements. You would fill this in. 3 advanced math courses that were taken. If you are building this chapter based off of the webinar, please select AMATYC is how you heard about Mu Alpha Theta. If you heard about it elsewhere, then check those off as well. And for a 2-year college, we would need to list the math courses that are at the college algebra or pre-calculus or above level. So go into your college catalog or have your students go into your college catalog and get this list. Course descriptions need to be submitted. And then number of charter members, and you'd be uploading a spreadsheet with those charter members. Get the appropriate signatures next. So that would be from the appropriate administrators at your institution. You would need to supply the check for the initial charter fee of $25 and $10 per charter member. And then it goes to our executive board for approval. I saw the chat come up. Okay. All right, we're almost there. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. All right, question came up. How long does it take for approval? It should be just a few weeks. So it's not very long. It's going to come down to how quickly the executive board does it, and if there's any issues. So if there's issues with questionable whether or not your charter application will qualify, then it might take a little longer. If everything is as it should be, and the approvers are checking their email and keeping up with it, it only takes a few weeks to get from every step in the process. All right, there we are. All right, so Mu Alpha Theta in the future. Here are some of my goals, and I'm hoping that some of you attending this webinar can help out with that. I'd like to see new chapters in new states. So we have a selection of states that have a bunch, many states that don't have any. So I'd like to spread out that way. And then also in some of the clusters of 2-year colleges with chapters, I'd like to see some collaboration. It would be great to have multiple chapters together, pitching in for a guest speaker or some event, putting together competitions among themselves. I'd like to see more community colleges at the national convention. So it's usually single digit that attends, single digit chapters. And then involvement in the AMATYC Student Math League and the Student Research League. So anything that requires funding that can be requested through Mu Alpha Theta. And so getting involved in both of those would be great. We have leadership positions in both within AMATYC for the Student Math League and the Student Research League. That would be great to collaborate with, try to get joint initiatives going. And I wanted to say thank you and farewell to all of you. I am sticking around for a little longer for any questions that you have. If we have any more discussion to make, we can have you promoted to be a panelist for that discussion as well. So if you have something more complex than a simple question, you can ask to be promoted. And if that's all, then I thank you for coming.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you for your expertise and your information. If you haven't already done so, if we could show Jonathan our appreciation for being here today with a comment in the chat, and as he said, we can take any other questions. Jonathan, I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, but I'm not seeing any questions yet. We'll give them
You're
a
still
minute.
typing them up.
Yeah, some of them take a little longer to type. Just a reminder that we will be sharing this information a little bit later, so you can go back and look at it at your leisure. But otherwise, thank you for attending today. And not seeing any other questions yet, I will go ahead and stop the recording. And you all have a great afternoon and evening.